Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for being with us today. Thank you. Thank you very much. We got a lot of talking to do. I do believe this is the first meeting since before the pandemic in which the majority of our members have attended in person. I'm so glad to have you all at the table. It's great to see everybody. For those of you on Zoom today, we completely understand and hope you'll be able to join us in person next time. As a reminder, meet the new opening meeting requirements. We ask that you keep your camera on at all times while business is being discussed. You may stay muted unless speaking or voting. Also, I want to recognize our audience today. It's so nice to meet several new CPE staff today and see many others face-to-face after a long 2 years. Do a quick audio check, and the folks on Zoom hear okay?
Yes. Yes, sir. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, Eric. Didn't see you there. Good to see you.
Good to be seen. Thanks.
For everyone watching the live stream on YouTube, we welcome you also, and thank you for your interest in our meeting. Heather, can you get on? Please call the roll. Okay, we'll just do the approval of the minutes. So the minutes of our April 14th, 15th. Oh, sorry. You have to do a roll call first. Oh, yeah, for the approval. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Mr. C.B. Akins. Mr. Colby Burks.
I'm here.
Dr. Mohammed Bakar.
Present.
Mr. Jacob Brown.
Here.
Dr. Kelly Ellis. Mr. Eric Ferris.
Here.
Ms. Lori Harper. Here. Ms. Karen Hoover. Here. Ms. Faith Kemper.
Here.
Chair Lucas Menzer.
Here.
Mr. Richard Nelson.
Here.
Mr. Madison Silver. Ms. Connie Smith.
Present.
Ms. Elaine Walker. Here. Mr. Kevin Weaver.
Here.
And Commissioner Jason Glass. You have a quorum.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. I get it. We have several, well, first we have to do the approval of minutes. The minutes from our April 14th, 15th meeting are in onboard. Are there any objections to those as presented?
Make a motion to maybe approved as presented.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed by saying
Aye.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is the oath of office. So we have several new faces with us today. On May 17th, Governor Bashir appointed Jacob Brown and C.B. Akins to the council. And then on June 10th, he appointed Connie Smith and Faith Kemper. Jacob Brown is from Louisville and is the founder and principal of Marion Development Group, which focuses on development and construction of affordable housing. He has a special interest on the education pipeline for the hands-on career and trades. Connie Smith is from Bowling Green and the president and chief executive officer of Med Center Health. She has an extensive background in the medical field, and she will be vital in our discussions regarding the healthcare pipeline. Faith Kemper is from Fort Wright. She retired from Procter & Gamble after 37 years in various technologically related fields or roles. Since that time, she has dedicated her time to community service and political endeavors and activism. C.B. Akins from Lexington is a familiar name in Kentucky's education world. He's the former pastor at First Baptist Church, Bracktown, and he's been on both the Kentucky Department of Education and the University of Kentucky boards. Jacob is with us here in person today. We are glad that both Faith and Connie were able to join us by Zoom on such short notice. C.B. Akins is out of the country. He's in Egypt, which I'm very jealous about, and wasn't able to join us today. So the three of you will be able to participate fully in today's meeting. Franklin County Judge Executive Houston Wells, welcome Judge Wells back, has joined us to swear you in. Judge Wells, thank you for being here. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. The three that are here, I ask that you raise your hand and then answer at the end of the oath of office, if you would, in the affirmative. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky so long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully execute to the best of your ability the office of member of the Council on Post-Secondary Education according to law? And do you further solemnly swear that since the adoption of the present Constitution, you, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within the state nor out of it, nor have you sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have you acted as second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help you God? Answer in the affirmative, yes, or
Yes.
I do. Okay. All right. Thank you. God bless and appreciate your service, and all of you stay safe. And it's an honor to do this, and what you do for our great state and for the citizens thereof, we're much appreciative. So thank you, and have a great day and a great meeting. God bless everybody.
Thank you all and welcome to all the new members. We're grateful to have you.
Congratulations, everybody.
Yes. Days are now over.
Yes.
Say that. Now for some sad news. As new members are appointed, it means that others are no longer serving. Both Carol Wright and Vidya Ravichandran were appointed at the same time as me, actually in July of 2016. However, their terms expired in December of 2021. They continued to serve until the replacements last month, and I think most would agree when I saw their contributions were numerous over the years. Staff has prepared resolutions thanking them for their service, and I'd like to read those at this time. I'll start with Vidya's. Whereas Vidya Ravichandran served on the Council of Post-Secondary Education from July 2016 through May 2022, and whereas Ms. Ravichandran was an active member of the Council, participating on the Executive and Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee, and whereas the founder and president of a global technology company, she advocated for technology-based solutions in the education sector to increase education access and quality, and to provide just-in-time information and support to students. And whereas Ms. Ravichandran has used her talents and influence to encourage more women to pursue careers in STEM and to advance the cause of increased diversity, equity, and inclusion in Kentucky's campuses. And whereas, in addition to her professional accomplishments, Ms. Ravichandran supported various charities around the world through the GT Foundation, which provides economically challenged families access to quality health services, educational assistance, and employment opportunities. And whereas Ms. Ravichandran had demonstrated her strong commitment to higher education by dedicating countless hours to the Council on Post-Secondary Education, traveling to Frankfurt and across the state to participate in meetings, tours, and other activities. And whereas the members of the council value and respect Mrs. Ravichandran's intelligence, compassion, work ethic, and desire to serve, and the application of those skills to public higher education, now therefore be resolved that the Council on Post-Secondary Education does hereby adopt this resolution, June 17th, 2022, thanking Vidya Ravichandran for her dedication, service, and wishing her good fortune in her future endeavors. I was sad that she would be hearing this.
She was not able to come today. She had a additional.
Next one is for Carol Wright. Whereas Carol Wright served on the Council on Post-Secondary Education from July 2016 through May 2022, and whereas Ms. Wright was an active member of the council serving on both the finance and nominating committees, and whereas as the president and CEO of Jackson Energy Cooperative, she applied her business acumen and leadership skills to higher education issues in Kentucky. And whereas as an electrical engineering major working in engineering for nearly 30 years, Ms. Wright served as a role model for young men interested in pursuing careers in STEM. And whereas Ms. Wright has enriched the council with insights about Kentucky workforce needs and how post-secondary institutions can improve the talent pipeline for business and industry. And whereas her desire for college access, affordability helped encourage campuses to tighten their budgets and moderate tuition increases. And whereas Ms. Wright has demonstrated her strong commitment to higher education by dedicating countless hours to the Council on Post-Secondary Education, traveling to Frankfurt and across the state to participate in meetings, tours, and other activities. And whereas the members of the council value and respect Mrs. Wright's intelligence, compassion, work ethic, desire to serve, and the application of those skills to public higher education. Now therefore be it resolved, the Council on Post-Secondary Education does hereby adopt this resolution, June 17th, 2022, thanking Carol Wright for her dedication and service and wishing her good fortune in her future endeavors. Both of these resolutions are in your materials, and I will also say that Carol will greatly be missed as well.
On the screen.
Hey, Carol, there you are. I was reading. Sorry, I didn't look up. Thank you for calling. You'll be missed, Carol. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words.
You're very welcome. Do I have a motion to approve both of these resolutions? So moved. Second by Lori, second by Richard. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Aaron.
So good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. And it's been a privilege to serve on this board for 5.5 years. And it looks like that the board is in really good hands. So congratulations and continue your good work.
We're going to miss you, but I'm going to see you in Eastern Kentucky. You know that, right?
Yes, I'm a proponent of education. And as you know, Aaron, education is key, especially in our area, to promote success. So anything you need, just let me know.
So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Well, with that, the next item on the agenda is the report from the CPE president, Dr. Aaron Thompson. President Thompson, I'll turn it over to you for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't make this too long because you got a long document in your board book. I will, though, start out by saying I want to thank this board for the advocacy you put forth with talking about the goals that we have in our state toward helping higher education connect with the workforce true enough, but also the value of higher education. So I understand the amount of time you put into this, not only in conversations with us, but what you've done. We got benefit from that, from all of our constituency. It looks like that people, you know, the idea that people are seeing more value in higher education. We did have a wonderful budget year for both higher education campuses as well as CPE. And I think it's because people are seeing the value of higher education. So I want to start out by saying thank you for your commitment and thank you for helping us to focus on this. Lori, I think our new strategic agenda, I don't mind saying, I've been around ever since higher ed reform. I think it's the best agenda we've got ever had.
The staff had a great deal in it, so I appreciate everything that they've done.
Absolutely, and I always give my staff compliments constantly. And I never ever, just want to be clear, I never give them a hard time, just to let you know. I'm also, you heard Rick talk about our healthcare collaborative. This workforce agenda, talent agenda is huge for us. But we were able to, as he said, put together really our employers with our higher ed folks to focus on this pipeline, the bigger pipeline, surely the nursing pipeline, but the bigger pipeline. So we were able to, and House Bill 1, be able to get some money. We were able to get 10 million here. We have now, Lee, Bill, and the crew been able to distribute or send out the criteria for distribution, I should say, to work on that. In return, we were able to hire a professional who retired from K-12, who's teaching, who's got a PhD in leadership, teaching at one of our institutions, and also owns a fairly good-sized healthcare company. To actually come here and really work on that with us, Dr. Leslie Sizemore. I think she's off on vacation this week, or I would introduce you. She's our senior fellow for workforce. You'll get a chance to meet her. We also at CPE received $80 million in new funding for this upcoming year for performance funding model. I want to thank the governor, the House, and the Senate. You know, our original proposal was a little bit smaller than this, but as the president, so Bill Payne will tell you, I said, guys, we have to think a little bigger. And so we had conversations with our legislature once again to think a little bigger, and they performed a little bigger. So that makes us happy. That money is now in the process of being ready to be distributed. The Finance Committee has already approved the process to make that happen. So we had $17.3 million from the year before in the performance funding pool. So this ended up in $97.3 million that we get a chance to distribute. That's not a bad way of thinking about success. We will be reconvening the performance funding work group here in July to look at what are the deficits in the way that we're doing performance funding, to make sure that we learn from the last 3 or 4 years that we have knowledge now, to make sure that it really assists all of our campuses in a way to help them to increase. Travis and Greg gave an update this morning to our executive committee on KSU. We are moving right along in that area. We submitted an update to the interim joint committee June 1 on the finances, especially, but also on the way we're looking at our overall management plan. The KSU board has approved a contract with a governmental service agency to help them with finances. This is a big area we've had at KSU that we're still heavily working on. You know, we also got money from General Assembly to make sure that we do it right. And CPE, as you all know, is heavily engaged in the process of making sure it is correct. In that return, you know, Travis, you know, leading that effort along with Greg, but I wanted Stephanie, please stand up, let people see who you are. Stephanie Mayberry was a part of our staff in our student success area, but now she's going to be one of our, or the person on that campus working with us in the academic affairs area. Stephanie has a great background at UK, mostly with us, I tell Stephanie, right? That's where the great background comes from. So we're excited about that. We'll be giving you updates on this constantly. Rick Smith, along with Haley McCoy out of Kctcs, has started a podcast. Now this is going really well. And I won't go, it's called the Higher Education Matters podcast. And they've interviewed a little bit of everybody, including me, Destiny Rourke, who you got a chance to meet this morning. So we are really getting the messages out as much as we possibly can, and in as many ways that we possibly can. Sue and her crew is really pushing this out really well for us. You heard about Gear Up Summer Academies. You know, we have several of those going on, and it really leads to this pipeline process that we talked about earlier, trying to make sure that it keeps flowing well. And also through the partnership with Bluegrass Tomorrow, we have 68 faculty representing 20 colleges and universities across the Commonwealth participating in the Academic Leadership Academy. We want to make sure that we are educating the next future leaders of higher education in a progressive way of thinking about making sure our student learning happens at a high quality level. So the AL fellows participate in a 2-day learning session. I get a chance to go talk to them, Melissa Bell, and a variety of other things. We have university presidents, provosts, a lot. So we really need to build this. And I think the next session is in October, Melissa at Center College, I think, October 21. We also have our Academic Leadership Development Institute, our ALDI program that's designed to actually help our minority faculty on campuses who want to increase their leadership opportunities to go in administration. CPE started this, and it's going really well. We received, we have money within our area to make sure that we do this. This is one of the more successful programs there are, I think, in the nation doing this. We also received $50,000 from the Illumina Foundation, which target efforts to close outcome gaps in post-secondary education. I'll let you read all about that. So we are really trying to hit all of these elements of our strategic agenda with not only state money and federal money, but any kind of money we can get from anywhere we can get it. So I appreciate you folks who are working on that. We have a report earnings on certificate holders. Richard, I think you would appreciate this if you hadn't had a chance to see it. In partnerships with UK Martin School of Public Policy, CPE has issued a report that found certificate earners increased their earnings by 14% on the average and had higher rates of return of growth before they even earned that credential just by going. So if you haven't had a chance to read this, please do so. So this goes a long way in pushing our citizens to think about at least getting a post-secondary certificate to increase their earnings beyond high school. I won't give you all my speaking engagements. We just gave you a few to think about. This coming month, we have an opportunity. We're on the national stage, just to let you know, a lot. I'll be in DC at the Ronald Reagan Institute as an example, as the higher education speaker to a lot of senators and Congress people to talk about what we're doing in Kentucky around higher education. I was invited as one of the keynotes to do that and represent higher education. So our work has been recognized in multiple places. There's so much to tell you about that I try to send you an update. If there's a way you want me to do it better, I'm happy to do that, but we want to make sure that we keep you informed. I always have to thank my staff once again. You've heard me do this over and over again. I've got an A1 top-notch staff, and I appreciate every single one of them. Sir, I'm happy to take any questions. I'll try to rush through that fairly quickly.
For any questions, I want to mention to some of the new board members, we do throw a lot of information at you at the work sessions and the business sessions. If you have any questions, I'm always available. Dr. Thompson's always available, so reach out. I'll try and reach out before our next meeting and go over any major topics that way everyone's in the loop. But the staff does a phenomenal job of providing the material ahead of time, so I do ask that you at least review it ahead of time. That just makes the meetings go smoother. If you have questions, feel free, call me, email me, same thing for Dr. Thompson. So with that, I'll open the floor for any questions for him. Yes, so good at communicating with no questions.
I like that.
Yeah, it's good. All right, at this time, I'll turn it over to Lori Harper, the Chair of the Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee.
Thank you very much. The Academic and Strategic Initiatives Committee, we met on June 7th. We received an insider look at the post-secondary transition readiness online course, which was developed to gear up Kentucky high school students with the essential skills necessary to successfully transition to and through post-secondary education. We heard a little bit about this in this morning's work session, but if you really want to see the course in action, I'd encourage you to watch the YouTube replay of our meeting and go out there and learn a little bit more about that strategy. We also received a report on 6 associate level programs approved at Kctcs institutions so far this calendar year. These programs received were expedited and reviewed and approval process, and the council does not need to review those directly. So they're just presented and we move forward. Heather did include a copy of that in the board materials that's online, and it can be reviewed there. We also reviewed 3 new academic program proposals and recommending final approval of each by the council today. The first is a Bachelor of Science in Leadership for Community Education and Human Learning at the University of Kentucky. It is a 120 credit hour program designed to prepare students to become effective leaders and implementing educational programs within the community context. The second is a Master of Science in Applied Philosophy from the University of Louisville. It is a 33 credit hour program will replace the healthcare ethics track of the Masters in Interdisciplinary Studies. Its curriculum offers graduate training in ethical leadership, a skill that is applicable to the variety of professional contexts within and beyond the healthcare industry. The third program is a Master of Arts in Educational Leadership from Northern Kentucky University. This is a 30 credit hour and will train and develop teachers for administrative positions as elementary, middle, and secondary school principals, as well as P12 supervisors of instruction. The program summaries for each of these were in your materials, and I just wanted to check if we had any other questions.
Questions about any of the? Okay,
Chair, turn it back to you.
excellent. So Ms. Harper has presented the ASI committee's recommendation to approve the 3 new academic programs listed on the agenda and provided in our materials. That recommendation serves as a motion, and a second is not needed. Before I take a vote, are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Sorry. And for the folks on Zoom, before I take a vote, you may want to go ahead and unmute yourself. All right, all in favor of the motion on the table at the time, indicate, or yeah, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Excellent. Thank you.
I would say to the new members, if you haven't gotten a copy of the Education Matters book, this is
Yes.
highly informational and it's directional. So it's strategic direction, and the staff and the committee worked hard on it. So please get a copy.
Here. Okay, the next item on the
Mr. Chair, before we get started, Savannah Wiley, who's working with us with the subcommittee on education, LRC, she's been here our entire time. Savannah, I'm so sorry I didn't introduce you. Thank you for being over. LRC has been very much, they have been so actively engaged with us at so many levels. Savannah is really just a wealth of knowledge, communicates with me and my staff very well. I would be remiss if I didn't let the board see who you are and know that you're here. Sorry.
No. The finance, next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee reports. So the Finance Committee met this past Tuesday on June 14th, and our agenda was packed with action items. Each were reviewed and discussed and recommended for approval by the council today. I'll pause between each item should you have any questions for myself or the staff. First, the committee reviewed and approved the tuition and mandatory fee proposal for academic year 2022-23 submitted by each of the four-year public institutions. If you recall, we reviewed and approved NKU's undergraduate rates at our April meetings, so Tuesday's proposal only includes their graduate rates. We are happy to report that all proposals submitted complied with the ceilings approved by the council in April of 2021. Additionally, the non-resident and online rates met the council's guidelines. Next, we reviewed and approved the proposal guidelines for the asset preservation. Actually, I'll pause there for any questions on those. And for the new members, it may be worth noting that we passed in April a 2-year guideline where any university could not raise their tuition by more than 2% in a given year, no more than 3% over those 2 years. So you can do 1 and a 2 or a 2 or a 1. Was there any questions? Next, we reviewed and approved the proposed guidelines to asset preservation pool funds. The post-secondary education asset preservation pool was developed to provide funding for individual asset preservations, renovations, and maintenance projects at Kentucky public post-secondary institutions. During the 2022 session, the General Assembly authorized $683.5 million in general funds, supported bond funds, and guidelines reviewed by the Finance Committee were to provide guidance to the campuses on a number of areas, including the matching requirements, use of the funds, eligibility criteria, and reimbursement process. Because it's anticipated that many of these projects will want to be expedited, and the General Assembly has already authorized the use of the funds, the Finance Committee also approved to recommend the council delegate approval authority to staff for any capital projects specifically funded by the asset preservation pool. Stop there for any questions. Stop if I go too fast. Council staff also presented the guidelines for the Endowment Match Program and Workforce Development Trust Fund. The Endowment Match Program was authorized by the 2022 legislative session to place $40 million in state bond funds for Bucks for Brains. Of that amount, $30 million was appropriated to the Research Challenge Trust Fund, and $10 million was appropriated to the Comprehensive University Excellence Trust Fund. On the other hand, the Workforce Development Trust Fund authorized $2,225,000 of non-recurring funds to the 2022-23 fiscal year to help Kctcs increase credential production capacity for identified supply gaps and support programs offerings to targeted industry sectors. The targeted industry sectors for this initiative are healthcare, advanced manufacturing, transportation, logistics, business services, and information technology, and construction and trades. Guidelines for both the Endowment Match Program and Workforce Development Trust Fund were reviewed and approved by the Finance Committee. Areas covered in the guidelines including the use of funds requirements, allocation of funds, how to request funds, and how to report. In this case, the endowment program, it is also specifies the matching requirements. Questions there? So I pause. Next, although the Finance Committee agreed to delegate to staff the review and final approval of the asset preservation pool projects, that delegation would not be final until after the council's consideration at this meeting. In order to further accelerate the process for 2 projects at Kctcs, the committee reviewed and approved them, which are a project at Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College for mechanical equipment and upgrades, and a project at Madisonville Community College to replace the roof at the Glenmar building. Finally, the Finance Committee reviewed and approved the KSU's request for $5.5 million from its $23 million 2021-22 special appropriation to address the current year budget shortfall. Per the letter from KSU, the funds will allow them to meet the payroll and end of year expenses, as well as expenses related to the capital projects and provide a cash reserve. We had a very productive committee meeting, so before I call for a motion, did anyone have any more questions on this? This will be the last time for questions before we take a vote. The Finance Committee's recommendation for all these actions will serve as a motion for the approval by the council. A second is not needed at this instance. All in favor of all of the motions that I just previously stated indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. If you have any questions on that, I know that was a lot of information. Feel free to let me know or reach out to Dr. Thompson or staff. We're happy to provide any background on any of that. The next item on the agenda is the Executive Committee report and action items. The Executive Committee met this morning and we received a status update on Kentucky State University and a discussion on a potential council retreat. I will open that up for conversation here in a moment. So we'll pause on the council retreat to have some information on that. The committee also reviewed and approved the staff's recommendation to keep regulation 13 KAR 2045, say 2:. In its current form, this regulation specifies the residency status for admission and tuition assessment purposes, and staff did not receive any feedback that would indicate that it needs to be amended. This formal recommendation is a requirement of the council because it has not been officially reviewed in 7 years. And without action, it would expire. Just for context, we're not changing anything. We're just keeping something we've had for 7 years. We're just making sure it doesn't expire. The committee also reviewed and approved the proposal 2022-23 CPE agency budget. That document can be found in the materials and it is online. With that was shared with us following the end of the 22 legislative session. The executive committee recommendations for both actions will serve as the motion for approval by the council, and the second is not needed. So I'll take a quick vote on the agency budget and the regulation re-up. So before I do that, are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. One item I would like to talk about is the council retreat. The executive committee did talk about doing a retreat. Currently, our recommendation is November 17th and 18th of this year. We would just ask the general counsel for, well, our counsel, not Travis, ideas on topics that you'd like to discuss during this retreat. For those of you who have not attended one of the retreats, they are extremely fruitful. So if you can, please make an effort to be there. It's a great opportunity. It's 2 full days. We get to go deep into topics. We get to have a lot of conversations. And we can ask staff to provide information. We can keep it more open. It's our retreat, so we can kind of guide it. The staff is here to help us with that. We're also taking recommendations on locations. Like Cumberland has been tossed around. State parks have been tossed around. So anybody has any recommendations, let us know. We'd like the agenda or topics for the agenda and the location locked in by end of July so that we can get these reserved. But right now it's November 17th and 18th is what we'll get all that locked in.
Mr. Mayor, can I say
Yes,
something quickly?
please.
on our agency budget. I know finance, you get such a deep dive, and Bill's always happy, and Sean will give you that, and executive committee too. Those that are new, that are not on either one of those, I just will tell you in the beginning, last year, obviously, we probably give you more information than you really want on our budget process, but you all approve it, you do the process. I'm happy to say that once again, we were not only within budget, we were able to get more money from outside sources to come in to do our work. So I'm proud of that too. And this, you know, when you have an agency our size, we had 97 people a few years ago. Now we have 47, but we're producing far more. I will say, if you don't believe me, I'll let you do your own work on this one, than we were when we had 97 people. We're doing it on far less money, and we come in within our budget. I hate to say that we came in low because that's not doing my job, but I'm just saying we come in within it. Now that means that we move things around, and quickly I'll just say, so I know Luke is running hard here, so I won't mess up his flow. But quickly I say, we don't have where if you lose somebody in a unit, we automatically replace it. That doesn't happen. What we do is, in an agency our size, which is not that big, we look at the holistic needs and the strategic direction we want to go. And we bring everything up, we look at it, and that's the way we allocate. And that position that we hire for may look nothing, even where close to the position that was occupied before. So I'm very proud. Once again, I keep bragging on my staff. I won't say something bad in a few minutes, I promise about it. But they do a really good job of focusing on exactly where we need to go. We've beefed up our human resources. Lee has looked at the overall area of what needs to be done. So we're going to continue that strategic process with you. Now you have to also understand Travis and his team, who still does all the CPE work. Now they got a whole new job, if you will, too. So we have been, I won't say distracted, but when we started out with the original budget, we were not thinking we were going to be doing some other item. So, but within this entire context, I'm saying we're ending our year, and I tell the board this every year, you know, where we're at by relative comparison to what you approved. Well, I'm proud to say once again, we were very effective and we came in under budget, Mr. Chair, and I just want to tell the board.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to, I'm going to brag on your staff here if I want to. Especially around the work that they've been doing with KSU. This was, KSU was not on our radar 2 years ago when we were thinking about the agency budget. And the work that Greg Rush and Travis and Dr. Thompson have done with the budget they have, the work that they've done has been nothing but miraculous. They are doing a tremendous amount of work and doing a tremendous amount of good to help one of our vital institutions get back to where they want to be. So for those of you who don't know, the amount of work, we could spend the rest of the day talking about it. I'm not going to. But I just want to commend all of them for all their hard work. So thank you on that. Any other questions? Right along. The next item on the agenda is the Committee on Equal Opportunity. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chair.
This spring, the Committee on Equal Opportunities oversaw the annual evaluation of the institutional progress toward meeting their equal educational opportunity goals set in policy. Staff is here to present our findings, our determination. I will tell you that it was my first time to go through the process, and I was very impressed with the work that goes into evaluating every single one of these reports and making the determination, because we all realize the impact that those scores can have.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
This is Dr. Dawn Offset, by the way, is our executive director of our EEO office and our DEI office. So just wanted to introduce you.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. So good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, Dr. Thompson, board members. I'm here to give the update on the institutional diversity plan report that we had in the past meeting, which was in April. And so I have a presentation that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the background of the process and then our results. So just a little bit of background for those who might not be familiar with this particular process. Thank you. In 1982, the council was found to be in violation of the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And basically that finding stated that it had failed to eliminate the vestiges of its former de jure racially dual system of public higher education. So in response to that point, in those findings, the council created a desegregation plan. And the council worked on that plan for the next 25 years. And in that plan, it focused on increasing the enrollment and success of African-American students, increasing the number of African-American employees on campuses, and enhancing Kentucky State University. And then there were some later versions that also focused on improving campus climate. So with that in mind, the CPE created the Committee on Equal Opportunities to provide oversight on the plan implementation and to ensure that diversity initiatives were a priority on Kentucky's public college and university campuses. In December of 2008, the committee then released, the Office of Civil Rights released the council from being found in this remedial planning process. So again, 25 years, I always like to pause because 2008 was not that long ago. And based on what was going on with the desegregation plan and all the good work that came out of it, the council decided to continue these efforts and initiatives. And so CPE has a statutorily mandated responsibility in the area of diversity and equal opportunities through KRS 164.02019, which requires that CPE postpones the approval of any new academic program at a state post-secondary educational institution if that institution has not met the educational equal opportunity goals established by CPE. So as such, the CPE, along with the CEO and the public institutions, developed a process that would help to ensure that significant progress was made in promoting diversity and was preserved and further enhanced throughout the public post-secondary education systems. So as a result, the Kentucky Public Post-Secondary Policy on Diversity was developed in 2010, and it was adopted by the CEO and the CPE. In this 2010 policy, the institutions in their diversity plans were required to address 4 areas at minimum: student body diversity that mirrors the diversity of the Commonwealth or the institution service area, the closing of achievement gaps, workforce diversity, and campus climate. At present, we are operating under the 2016 iteration of the policy, and we are building on that strong foundation, but we wanted to make sure that we integrated both the new program approval process along with the statewide diversity policy into one seamless framework so that equal educational opportunity goals that are set can be evaluated throughout the iteration of the policy every year. And so that's where we are today to talk about the evaluations of this year's programs. So as we stated before, each institution is required to develop its own diversity plan. They are to report on the progress of that plan, and it's evaluated annually. So we're looking at the plan and the work that was done in the academic year of 2020 through 2021. And so institutions submit a qualitative report, they do a self-evaluation, and in that self-evaluation, they have to submit a qualitative narrative. The overall process in and of itself is divided into 2 sections. There are quantitative metrics that each institution has agreed upon with their institutional research units. And they also have to have strategies that will talk about how they're going to meet those annual progress goals. So we like to say it's the story behind the stats, if you will. So we have the quantitative section. There are 18 possible points for our universities and 16 for our Kctcs institutions. And for the qualitative narrative, there are 18 possible points for both institutions. So the minimum score to be automatically eligible to offer new program approval is 24 for universities and 22 for our Kctcs institutions. So for our quantitative metrics, again, our institutions have a 5-year target, and then they are to show and demonstrate that they are meeting annual progress. They're making annual progress toward that 5-year goal. And so you'll see that there are the following areas listed there. There are undergraduate and graduate enrollment. You'll see a star by graduate enrollment because we don't have graduate enrollment at our Kctcs institutions, and that is the difference between the 16 score and the 18 score. And then you also have first or second year retention for our URM and low income students, our graduation rates for our URM and low income students, our degrees and credentials conferred and awarded for our URM and low income students, and then our workforce diversity. And so the way that we have those scored is that if they have met or exceeded their annual target, they get a 2. If they're making progress toward that based on the baseline of 2015, 2016, they get a 1. And if they're below that initial baseline of 2015, 2016, they get a 0. For a maximum point of total points of 18 for our universities and 16 for our Kctcs institutions. So I want to pause here for a moment just to talk about enrollment, because we look at enrollment both, when we look at it holistically, we look at the enrollment numbers, but we also look at the diversity on campus. We use a broad diversity definition because we know that diversity is more than just race and ethnicity, and institutions are able to classify and define what diversity looks like on their campuses, and we want to know what they're doing on their campuses. So if you look under the second bullet where it says the institution shall demonstrate that the diversity of its student body provides its students with the opportunity to receive the educational benefits of diversity as described in our policy. This may be substantiated by providing evidence that goals outlined in an institution's plan were generally attained or significant progress was made towards that goal. And here, that students have been provided the opportunity to interact with diverse peers both inside and outside the classroom and through the means identified by the institution and supported by valid research. So I wanted to point that out because we have institutions not only look at the numbers, the metrics, but they submit to us a narrative. And in that narrative, they get to talk about all of the ways that students get to interact with other individuals that are diverse from how they identify themselves. So within that narrative, we look at the whole definition of diversity. So it's not just the numbers, it's about the other things that they're doing that might not be captured under our URM and low income enrollment. So we look at those targets with African-American students, undergraduate enrollment, et cetera. But we also look at that narrative that talks about, for example, how they work with students of different religious backgrounds, those individuals who are considered veterans, those individuals who are in the LGBTQIA+ community, et cetera. However that institution defines diversity, and they get to describe the good things that they are doing to promote diverse interactions among their students. And so this particular component is the only one that's scored as a pass-fail, if you will. Either they are making progress or they're not, whether they're getting a 2 if they're making progress or a 0. And again, our universities, our 4-year universities are scored for both undergraduate and graduate enrollment in this section. So for the qualitative scores, again, this is the story behind the stats. Each institution in their diversity plan gets to identify what strategies that they are going to use to meet these metrics and their goals annually. And so there are 3 broad categories that we use, those focus areas of opportunity, where we're talking about getting students to campuses, success, getting those students through to completion, and impact, we're looking at workforce diversity and campus climate. And so each institution answers questions on their strategies that answer these 3 questions. 1, how do they implement that strategy with fidelity? 2, how do they analyze that strategy for effectiveness? And 3, what lessons learned and next steps were given. So these areas are scored holistically by our teams that are made up of CPE as well as CEO members. And those teams come to score the institutional responses with a 2, whether they meet or exceed expectations, a 1 if they're making progress toward meeting those expectations, and a 0 if they do not meet those expectations. And those are the maximum for 18 points for both Kctcs and our 4-year institutions. So again, that's how we get our collective score. As stated before, again, based on our KRS 164.02019, any institution that does not meet the minimum required score is not automatically eligible to apply for new academic program approval for the upcoming year. So the minimum score is a 22 out of 34 for our Kctcs institutions and 24 out of 36 for our four-year institutions. So this year, it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but I believe each of you was given this in your packets of information. You'll see that for our four-year institutions, you'll see the scores there. The ones out of the bottom and they're highlighted in yellow are the overall total scores for each institution out of the score of 36. And just to let you know how this looks, at the very top, you'll have the scores for the quantitative sections only. That's what those are. And then the next to the last line above the highlighted area is the total of the qualitative score. We combine them together and got the total score in highlighted area for our four-year institutions. And this is probably going to be smaller, a little bit smaller for our Kctcs institutions. The same thing. At the top, the qualitative scores are listed there. The quantitative scores are listed there in the bold print there. And then right above the highlighted line, the next to last line is our qualitative scores. And then you combine the two for your highlighted institution for our Kctcs total scores. So as a result, we have four institutions that did not meet their minimum scores: Henderson Community College, Hopkinsville Community College, Murray State University, and Southeast Community and Technical College. And so those institutions at present are not automatically eligible to apply for new academic program approval for the upcoming year. However, there is a waiver process, and each institution will be sent information on that waiver process by July 1st of 2022, so that they can develop, if they so choose, an improvement plan. And in their improvement plan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just had a question. I was kind of curious as I was reading this material. Do you want to take a look at how they scored last year, year over year? Are they making improvements, and how does that compare? I'll be honest, I can't remember who was on the list or who wasn't on the list. So I'm kind of curious if the same ones are still on the list and they're not making progress, and or what those expectations are.
And I'll let them answer fully, but I'll just give you an example. That's why we use this as a continuous process.
Yeah.
That's why we intervene. Western did not make this. Now they have the high school. To give you an example. So bottom line, the whole idea is how do you learn from the mistakes in order to grow? Eastern didn't make theirs, and they did. KSU didn't make theirs, but what they did. So what we do is we don't say it's not even though you made it, no, it's not an either or. That's why they have an opportunity for a waiver process that they choose. And those that do this end up creating, okay, I understand what went wrong. I see what we did. This is what we're going to do to correct it. So it's like a corrective process. And once they do, the next time they go in, that becomes a new baseline of looking at it. Sorry, Dawn, I probably won't say else.
Yes, I hear Travis behind me. Before I just.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so the answer to that is yes, we, as Dr. Thompson said, this is a continuous improvement process. And so if I'm thinking correctly, I'm not sure, we have individual institutions that differ each year. I don't think that we've had any institution that has not made it back to back.
Back to back.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's usually about 3 or 4, and it's usually somebody different every time. So
I have a follow-on question again. It's just again. So at this point in time, unless they get away with those 4 institutions are not going to add any academic programs. So since those have come before my committee, the ASI committee, I'm kind of curious. That waiver process is done through the, make sure I get the name of it right, the Equity and Opportunities Committee.
Committee on Equal Opportunity.
Right.
CEO.
Yeah. Right, yeah. So, and so we have to assume that if one of those comes through, that means you all have been granted a waiver.
That's correct. We always report out.
Melissa Bell will
We'll get
stop
the
it.
report
Yeah,
out.
I just don't remember
And we
this
coordinate,
as coming up.
yeah.
So that's why,
manually, we can flag it in the computer system.
Okay, so we put that.
You would never see it, yeah.
Okay.
But you can be rest assured if you do get them, and you'll know about it beforehand, that if you do get one from them, that they have been approved waivers.
Yeah, okay.
So just to follow up with that, so they'll get the information on July 1 as to what it is they need to do. So that we'll go back and forth, make sure that everything's been submitted so that by the October CEO meeting, it should be on they should be on the agenda for approval, so they'll know. Then we'll make sure that Melissa knows, and Melissa will make sure that you know, et cetera, so that we're all in communication. And so that covers, I believe, that part of the waiver process. Any other questions? Well, here on that one, and then I can put it back up again for questions.
I had a quick lesson question statement. So I got to participate for the first time. Great to talk to you in person, by the way, instead of Skype. I look pretty scary sometimes on those Skypes.
But you look good now, man.
Thank you, thank you. You know, I'm going for a look today. I don't know how it compares to other years, but there was some of the schools that I was assigned that I'll say the naming. But I was kind of disappointed for the qualitative aspect when it was what they had the word max you could do, and there was like one sentence they provided for that specific area. And sometimes they just blamed it on COVID. They didn't explain how they're going to go forward or how they're going to go to an online format if something like this ever happens again. They kind of just said better luck next year, which was kind of frustrating, and didn't provide you with the information necessary to score it. Is that normal? And it kind of just seems like it speaks volumes for their commitment, unless I'm being too hard on them.
No, I'm not gonna say that it's normal. We provide both the, as requested, information in terms of what we're looking for and responses. The rubric is out there for everyone to see, to say, here's what we're looking for in order to get a 2, a 1, or a 0. And as you know, we also work with our teams or review teams to say, let's do a norming process, a calibration process to say, here's what we're looking for, as we're scoring, so that when the teams get together on their own, they will have had a bit of training around that. And so we hope that institutions use this really as a continuous improvement process. Again, it's not a gotcha kind of thing. It's, here's what we're trying to do to make sure that we are meeting these goals. And in that, we're looking for institutions to be able to be specific, to be really thoughtful about, how we've done this particular year, what lessons we learned. And even if it's with COVID, to be able to say, we really have this great plan, and then we got, smacked in the head because COVID. And so, but here's how we bounce back. Did it work? Did it not work? Maybe yes, maybe no. But here's what we learned from it, how we plan to move forward. And so that's really what our expectation is. So to your point, if that's what you saw, that's why we have this process. So for you to be able to score it appropriately and then give feedback to the institution to say, here's what it is that we're looking for, so that we can give that to the institutions, and hopefully they'll know that we're looking for more robust responses for the next time they write the report.
We give them all the information that's provided from the committees. And I can't remember if you were at the CEO committee meeting or not, but we did the full report out, and each review team lead went over each report for each institution and gave them verbal feedback as well as the feedback that was provided in writing. From the scores, I don't know the exact experience that you were talking about. For the most part, we felt like we received pretty good responses. I mean, again, we had a lot of review teams reviewing into the norming session. The qualitative scores are pretty good, so I think what you saw was an anomaly. I think most institutions really did a good job of explaining what they had to go
Only
through. So
two.
yeah.
It was one out of
So I
that
think-
two. So I was just wondering if
I
that was
don't think
what
that was
everyone
a
else
typical.
experienced.
I don't think that was a typical experience based on the scores that we received.
I do want to add one other item, though, that's important, because you raised something, whether you raised it or not. We feel, coming out of COVID, we feel like we need to hit the road, Dawn and her team, to go to the institutions, work with them directly, and really create an educational dynamic, if you want to call it that. It could come our way too, right? To make sure that they do that. If you give a one sentence thing and blame it on something, we're not going to get a good score. It's that bottom line, right? If it is a COVID related issue, you say, hey, this was effective. This is what we intended to do. This is what happened because of COVID. This is what we will do, coming out of this. So that's the continuous improvement understanding that needs to happen. The other point I make, I'm sorry, Elaine. The other quick one I make is that we understand that diversity doesn't come just in black and white. It could be thought process, could be political, it could be a variety of things. We give the campuses a lot of leeway on certain things to decide what are the dynamics in your area that creates a healthy campus around the issue of inclusion. Because learning is about the process of dealing with people that are different to you to learn from them. That means you have to be that person. So that dynamic is important to understand because it's easy to say, did you increase by 3, Latinx people? But that still doesn't tell you much. Are you creating a campus that is open, that you want people to come to and have the dynamism of healthy learning? So that's why we have this big cultural competence element into it. How well are you creating a set of dialogue, processes, actions, and policy processes? For an example, it is important that we measure how many people of color that are in leadership positions. But if you have nobody in a leadership position that can make policy changes or that can have any impact on anything, well, then you're playing a shell game. That's the case. It's not saying much, right? So we intricately look at all these things. But Dawn and her crew they're going on the road. Elaine, I'm sorry, I probably disturbed your action.
No, apologies necessary. One of the things I wanted to say was when we were reviewing, I think we reviewed 4 on our team. It was amazing to see every now and again you would identify something that just really stood out as an incredible approach to address an issue that you might not have thought of. And we talked about best practices because there is no need to reinvent the wheel. Other universities and institutions are doing it. So, let's show them how you can do it successfully and make it easy.
Kind of piggybacking on that, over the last few years and the different institutions that show up on this list, are there 1 or 2 issues that are predominant, or is it just kind of all over the board? Shortcomings.
We're looking at progress, the way that we evaluate the quantitative score. It's on a trajectory towards baseline and a target. And they get evaluated based on where they are on that trajectory. And, it's linear progress up to the goal point there. Depending on the cohorts that come through, when you talk about graduation rates or degrees conferred, sometimes those can differ. So you may have a real strong cohort one year. This happens on some of the smaller comprehensive campuses too. And then the next year, there may be some variation in that cohort. Maybe it's not quite as strong. So it's not always a linear approach. I think that's the only way we can really look at it. But sometimes that trips them up a little bit and ends up being scores being a little bit lower. For the most part, on the qualitative side, like you can control that in the way the evaluation is, because most of the points come from evaluating effectiveness and then what do they do with that information moving forward. So, you can really control that. You can always evaluate what you did. You can always talk about next steps. If you didn't implement something that you said you were going to do, that's more of an issue, but you can control more of the qualitative pieces. So it's usually dealing with the cohorts. I think overall, just speak, and Dr. Thompson, I know you would agree with this just based on the data. We need to do better with our low-income students. That's across the board with all our campuses. When you see the numbers being a little bit low, you see most of that in the low-income areas. And so we need to work towards that. We've done really good with our URM populations. We can always do better. Always put that caveat on there. But we've done really well on closing that gap. So we need to look at our low-income students too. And that's something that's been an issue across the board that we're going to work towards.
Quantitatively speaking, it would be the low income. Qualitatively speaking, and Dr. Often, tell me if I'm wrong, sometimes people take the question for granted and not answer it with that mentality. Does that make sense? Kobe just gave a good example of that. You give a 1, you could have something really powerful to say, but if you don't say it, we don't know it, right? So there's some consistency in that. Am I correct?
It's gotten better. I think that specifically to that point, in the section about analysis for effectiveness, there is, someone said, we had the strategy, and it went really well. Well, how do you know it went well? How are you measuring success? What was your goal? The reader doesn't know that. So being more specific for that. So they might not score as high in that section because they don't give as much detail as the team is looking for. That might be, an example for that.
I will say that being hard too. I think it's subjective and it's just, I didn't have all the background information on some, so I wish they would have.
Absolutely, they could give more information. We work with, our reports have gotten significantly better over the years. They really have. And again, there's always a couple examples here or there on certain sections that maybe weren't as robust as we would like them to be. But for the most part, the campuses have really embraced this and are really writing really excellent reports that they give us tons of good feedback about what's going on and help share best practices amongst campuses because they really evaluate what's working and what's not working. So, I mean, I commend the campuses for all the work that they've done in this reporting cycle and the years before too. It's really improved, and I think they do a fantastic job.
This is our fourth reporting cycle.
It is interesting to see the institutions where there's leadership buy-in, because it clearly is more significant.
That's such a true statement. And the other thing I'll say, and I'll leave it alone, I know Mr. Terry needs to move on. I'll just say that we hope that everybody passes. But I consider our jobs being the best teachers we can be for the needs of the state, which means that we're going to keep continuously improving. What we're getting this time is so a bazillion times better than what we were getting 4 years ago. Quadrillion times. Is there such a thing? You think with a PhD, and I'm a statistician, I would know that. Than it was 10 years ago. So our goal is that get it to a point where everybody is great.
So just as we look at our next steps, in addition to what Dr. Thompson said about our team going on campus review, there are a few other things I was going to call your attention to, is that we're going to work with the institutions that did not meet the minimum score to help facilitate the improvement plan process so they can request waivers. We're going to continue to identify the high impact practices that CEO Chair Walker was discussing earlier. We are going to look at, we had a 5-year initial target set for our goals. So we are in the process of working with our IR team and institutional IR teams to develop those targets out through 2024. And then to your point in terms of report writing, we also have learned that in some of these positions, there is turnover in terms of the individuals who are writing the reports. So someone comes in and they come in the middle of the report writing process, and now they have a report due, within a month, and they're like, okay, so what is it that I need to do? So we want to develop some report writing training so that we can record those and people have access to them, so that regardless of when someone comes in, they'll be able to have access. And of course, they can always ask us the questions as they need to. And then just begin preparing for our next cycle, because it starts all over again July 1. So those are our next steps. And so if there are any other questions or comments, guys.
I hear y'all say you all are collecting best practices, or is that something that's working?
We're looking at the reports that have been written. We're looking at their targets, they're meeting their targets and how they are writing reports. And then we in spring of 2021, we had one high impact practice document that we had written, and we want to continue to update that and be able to disseminate that out to the institutions to say, just like CEO Chair Walker was saying, why reinvent the wheel? You've got similar demographics as this other institution. They're using this strategy because this is working well. We want to share that with you all for you all to consider.
Yeah, the reports are out there for the campus to look at. If anybody wants to look at anybody else's report, they can. But we try to take this in our shop and try to look through them and help identify those. We can look through them all and have the opportunity to look through them all and say, hey, this one has been done in a couple different places, or this one's really effective here at this campus, and we want to highlight it. So we're in the process of doing that. Again, that continuous improvement model that we're trying to put in place.
Another, just one small piece. We look at best practices from all resources. I mean, there's national best practices. There are other institutions around the nation that have done good jobs around a particular set of needs or strategies. And then there's institutions in the state. We're combining all of those. We give them a lot of the national best practices up front, say, try this. But then through the process of us getting information from our campuses, there are best practices happening here right in good old Kentucky. Let me tell you, all of our four-year institutions are almost at an 8% retention rate. Who would have ever thought that? We sometimes forget that. So there's a lot of best practices going on. You heard Tim Cavoni said they're 2 percentage points away from closing the gap with their URM to the majority of the population. And they took that up 20 percentage points in the last several years. So there are best practices there. So we're talking about holistically combining all of it where they will see that repository in a way that they can pick and choose how to try something with fidelity in order to get where they need to go.
I think one last comment. Thank you. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the review teams. Thank Kansas for all their hard work. This is a heavy lift. There's a lot of work that goes that's involved in these reviews. These folks take, whether it's CEO members taking time out of their busy schedules to our staff members taking time away from their normal work. It's a lot of work, but it's valuable as we've discussed today. And I just wanted to say that there's 24 reports that are being reviewed by these review teams, and they all do an excellent job and give such great feedback. You can tell in the reports they really care about what the campuses are doing and really want to help the campuses improve. And so I just want to say thank you to all those review team members for doing such a great job.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I stand on the shoulders.
Understand.
Thank you.
Before we close out the CEO report, I'd like to formally appoint a new member to the committee, Ms. Myra Gomez. I hope I'm pronouncing your first name correctly. Who will replace Alfonso de Torres Nunes and serve a term beginning July 1st to June 2024.
So excited about her appointment. Young, real go-getter attorney.
I say her first name right?
It's actually Maida.
Amanda, okay. I wasn't sure. Good, that sounds like a great addition. The campus good news reports can be found in your materials. Some of the highlights you want to read about include the launch of a new healthcare program at BCTC that's in partnership with UK and Garrett County High School. The establishment of the new Center for Career Development and Experiential Education at Morehead State University. UK's START program created to create a unique pipeline for STEM majors for traditional underrepresented populations. And Western's announcement regarding their forensics team winning the national championship in April. Well, I know that out of the news here. On a special note, IQ's report touches on President O.J. Eleka's announcement that he plans to step down as president in November. We'll have a resolution for them at that time, and hopefully we can get him to give us one last update before he leaves. Before we close out, is there any additional business that needs to be brought up before the council?
So I think I'm looking like late that we missed anything.
All good.
Okay.
Meet your goal.
I aim to exceed my expectations. Try not to suck at my job. Our next meeting will occur on Monday, September 19th, and directly before the annual post-secondary education trusteeship conference, which will be at the High Regency in downtown Louisville. For the new members, I highly recommend that. That's a great session. So Heather, I'm sure will send us lots of information on that. Because of the pandemic, CPE has been unable to hold this event in its traditional form since 2019, and it's my hope that everyone has the dates held on their calendars and will attend. It's a great opportunity to hear from national experts on timely topics, receive continual education on board leadership. I'll pause there. We've always talked about making sure that our board stays educated on how to be an effective and good board. This is that opportunity. So for those of you who are new, it's a great opportunity to hear from others that are in like positions. And network with campus board members and leadership. Additionally, the governor has been asked to speak at the luncheon, and staff are also planning a legislative panel with House and Senate speakers. Heather will be in touch with those details in the coming weeks, so we certainly look out for that email. I think that's it for what we all have for today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Well, before you go, can I say one thing? I want, we sent out, there's been some changes in positions, some promotions, some moves around, whatever. Lee, did you forward that all to the board? We will be forwarding to you. I won't take up the time now. There's been some, I will just say Lee is now Senior VP. Amanda's been made VP as an example. There's some more things that are moved around. Heather has been such a good job, has been promoted to do more stuff. These folks are taking on more duties. So, I mean, anybody, yeah, I mean, seriously, we have a lot of good things going on. You know, I just want, we want to make sure that you get all the information you need. We will be sending out this to everybody. Lee, did I miss anybody that's in the room now?
Sure.
Yeah, you know, I'm always good, but I did want to say that, sir, so people.
Absolutely. All well deserved. All well deserved. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, you can say your